All right, welcome to ZBrush for iPad. This time around, we're going to go ahead and start with the base mesh. Let's do this demo head female. And I got a comment recently that the viewer, wanted to see my process for creating hair. I assume sculpted hair. Obviously, you may or may not know you can do fiber mesh hair here in ZBrush, but a lot of times if you're using ZBrush, you're wanting to create something that you can 3D print, or maybe it's for a game asset or something, and you want sculpted hair. So that's what we'll do today. In the future, maybe we'll play with fiber mesh, something like that. So if we're starting with a base head like this, or not, whatever, you could be starting with your own character that you've designed. That's not the important part, right? Go ahead and hold down the masking button, and I've got symmetry turned on right now because this part of the hair creation process is pretty symmetrical. So just getting in here, painting a mask of where the hair would be growing out of the head. So, whether you have long hair or short hair, it's going to be, it's going to start, the roots are going to start from a certain part of the head, unless you've got some freakish issue, you're not going to be growing hair really long way down here. You might have some hair there, but yeah, we're getting to an unfortunate place in the conversation real early, so I apologize. Let's see, we'll make the brush bigger so we can paint in this big area real quick. And, don't be too precious or too careful at this point. It doesn't matter too much, and ZBrush and this process is super forgiving, so you can fix it really quick. I want to be careful we didn't paint the ears at all, so I'm going to use my eraser and clean that up a little bit. Okay, so that's a believable hairline. And, look at reference, look at other people. The hairline can vary greatly, even on a full head of hair, right? Something I haven't had in a while. Anyways, okay, so we've got our mask. And for this process, the way I'm going to do it is go to a menu here, make sure you choose tool and then subtool, and then extract. If I hit extract, this is just a preview, you can see it's pretty thin. And for our clothing that we did the other day, that was good. But for this, I want something a little thicker. That's maybe too much, too little, just right, the Goldilocks zone. And, any of those stages would work, but that's kind of what I'm looking for. So we've got this sweet helmet head, and if that is what you were going for, then congratulations, you're done. But I'm guessing it's probably not. So we're going to unmask that. If you missed it, it's hold down mask and then just draw a rectangle outside of the object, and then that'll unmask it. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and solo that, turn on our polygon view mode, and you can see it creates these nice poly groups for us. The inside has its own group, the edge, and the top of the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and select both of these buttons, click on that, and then draw a rectangle outside of it. So now that inside piece is invisible because I don't want it, for this process. So we're going to go back into our menu and then geometry and modify topology, delete hidden, bada bing. If I were to take these and tap or draw a square, nothing's happening. That means we're seeing all of our visible geometry right now. Okay, so next step is to mask just the edges here. So select, come on, there we go. Got just the edges viewable. Hold down our masking, draw, wait, tap, yeah, tap. And then that selects everything that's viewable. And then we're gonna do that selection again, tap, turn off solo mode. And so now these edges closest to the head are masked. So that'll just help, keep me from, while I'm doing my initial kind of pulling of the hair, get that general hairstyle. That'll ensure that things stay in place. So I'm going to turn off the polygon view mode here. You might, well, with the mask on, you can't really do that. I'm gonna go back a step. Let's go ahead and unmask it for now. And then first I want to just kind of smooth these edges out here, because it's a little harsh. It's poking through the air. We're just holding the shift button over here, smooth that out. Maybe smooth this area a little bit more because that's thinner. Okay. Now, the beautiful thing is the poly group, that green poly group is still in play. So we can select that. Let's mask it. And now that it's masked, we can make everything visible. And I like to increase the size of the brush here so it's pretty big. Grab a move brush. It's your preference if you want the standard move or you want this move topology. They're pretty similar. And just pull the hair down, because we've decided we're going with something a little longer. It's, maybe shoulder length. So, we're getting all these stretching back here. We can blur it a little bit, but that's part of the process. So don't worry too much. My overhead light is flickering a little bit, so fix that. Turn it off. Changes the lighting a little bit, but all right. And we're back. All right. So beautiful, right? What more could you want? And right now we're in symmetry mode. So most people's hair doesn't stay perfectly symmetrical. So we'll get out of the symmetry mode soon enough here. Maybe I'll use the clay buildup to build up a little bit of volume up here at the top. Oh yes, beautiful. Flowing head of helmet hair, right? All right, so we got a little bit of volume. And again, I masked that initial area just so when I was pulling and getting in here, creating the longer part of the hairstyle specifically, I wanted to ensure that those root polygons had a good place. Okay, so now we'll unmask and we'll get out of that polygon view. And again, it's something I say to myself constantly. Basically, it's a mantra: trust the process. Trust the process, because at this stage, you're thinking, this looks horrible. How is this ever going to look halfway decent? Well, trust the process. All right, so we've got some volume. Let's dynamesh this thing. Okay, so happen quick, but you can see the density's a lot more dense. You know, smooth it out a little bit. But now at this point, if you're looking at reference and you know exactly what you're going for, then that'll help. You can just jump in and start doing that. But I just want to, I'm doing this from memory, thinking about, how does hair flow? I've grabbed the DamStandard brush and I'm just creating some directional lines, because that's how hair works, especially a long hairstyle like this. Gravity, the way that it was combed, is all going to play a part here. No pun intended. My daughter would be proud of me. I used to be horrible at the puns, but she's taught me the ways. All right. So, that's one way. And I'll use a combination of the DamStandard brush and the clay buildup brush, two of my go-to modeling brushes. And this one is great for hair, this clay buildup, because, hair, I like to think of it in chunks, not individual strands. So you usually have kind of grouping that happens with your hair. It depends on the, if you're running your fingers through your hair, it's going to create this grouping. If even using a comb or a brush, it's not, most combs are not going to grab individual strands of hair. That would be painful and you would lose lots of hair, and there's no reason. The whole purpose of brushing one's hair is just to get it generally going in the right direction, right? Should have been a hairstylist, right? After seeing this video, you're all thinking that. All right, and I could go through and smooth that all by hand, or not worry about it. But there are different ways that you can smooth things out a little bit, in case you didn't know. Go into your menu, deformation, got polish, all these different polish things. Play with that, relax. There's smooth down here, play with those, see what works best for you. Get a little polish, see? That really smoothed it out a lot. So depending on what you want, those are there. They're quick little tool for you. So at this point, I think I've done all I can do in symmetry mode. So we're going to say goodbye to symmetry, turn that off, and now we're in the wild, wild west of non-symmetrical sculpting. It's scary. It's scary, but you can do it. Yes. Siri, go away. So I'm going to pick a side that's going to be a part for this specific hairstyle. Just kind of start carving in here a little bit, a little smooth. Yeah. And guess what? If you go too far and you're like, oh great, it's gone from a part to something unfortunate, well, you just click on that plus minus, start sculpting back. It's like, hey, people would pay good money for this. Bring their hair back, and see, we're getting some stretching. So just, dynamesh every once in a while. Hold down the masking button. Boom. Added some new topology. It's like a new lease on life. Okay, so we've got that. We're going to make some broad strokes to get this hair kind of apart. We're bringing it over. bringing it over. I'm thinking Dana Scully from X-Files type of hairstyle, maybe. Yes. Scully. Telling Mulder that he's crazy, even after she's seen some crazy stuff herself. She's a woman of science. She can't believe that this could be the unexplained. You know, she's got her hair all slicked back, business style. Mulder is telling her, "I'm telling you, Scully, I saw it. I saw it." Okay, that was that was unnecessary. I apologize. Same thing over here, but a little different. So just broad, nice broad strokes. See my fingers do some weird kind of poses as I'm doing the screen board shortcuts, whatever you want to call them in this day and age of tablet computing. So we're making some massive movement here. So again, I'm using the clay buildup brush, big size, plenty of pressure, and I've got my hairstyle in mind, but you may be looking at reference, and it all depends on how this is going to be used. Is this for 3D printing? Is this for a game model, an avatar? Is this something that needs to be animated? Is it going to be on the web or older technologies where you can't have 100,000 polygons in the hair to make it more realistic? And if that were the case, you may be getting to the point where you're close to being done here with at least the general shape. If you're using different maps to get more detail, you could sculpt that in and save out a lower mesh and apply that, but that's a whole different lesson video in the series. And love to hear how y'all do this. Everybody has their different methods. Others may have started with a sphere and not use the masking / extract process. That's cool. You do you. And maybe we can learn from each other, right? That's the fun thing. It's like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And you're like, oh, I like that one part of your process. Here's what I'm doing. And I'm like, oh, sweet. I'm going to incorporate a piece of your process. And now we both got a better process. And it still might be different. Or for one hairstyle, I'm going to approach it this way. For another, I'll approach it that way. It's a magical world. For those of you who grew up in a time before the internet or when it was in its infancy, pre YouTube, you can believe that. This is amazing, this knowledge share that we have today. I love it. All right, let's Dynamesh again. All right, so let's back up and admire what we have. I think I'm going to play with the DamStandard brush a little bit. I'm going to invert it so that it's adding to as opposed to sculpting in, and I'll kind of define some of these edges where the hair the clumps of hair are coming together. And I'm not getting too perfect yet, and I'm working all across the entire, subtool or model. Because if I just focus on one area and make it super detailed, just like in drawing, things won't feel, or they have a high chance of getting out of sync. You've got one area where the hair is more dense and more finely sculpted, another area where it's pretty blocky and loose. But if you're constantly jumping around, looking, that's really the secret, is the training of your eye, to see things and what is right and what looks right and what doesn't. And trust that, because, whether you know it or not, you're constantly observing, especially other humans. I think I've heard, and it makes sense, that, we're hardwired to recognize humans, and that's why we're always seeing faces in things that aren't humans. We want to get a read pretty quick, like, is this a safe human? Am I in danger? And so forth. But the point I'm trying to make here is that what looks right. You may be looking at something and say, yeah, that looks off. I don't know why, but it does. And that's the start. And so continue to observe and train your eye and look at reference. Oh, we're getting into masking here. I gotta watch those fingers. Okay, so at this level of density with the Dynamesh, it's pretty close to being, as far as I want to go at this density. And that's the goal. At least that's how I learned ZBrush back in a time when, we didn't have these amazing computers and iPads that can handle billions of, okay, I'm getting myself into dangerous territory here, trying to talk about technologies that I don't really fully understand, but lots of calculations at once. Okay, so that is good. Now we're going to hold down the Dynamesh again. Let's bump this up to around 300. Go ahead and Dynamesh it now. So if we look at our polygon count, it's pretty high. We can see it over here, 167,000, and where we're currently at. We're getting some weird kind of shapes, so I'm going to go back to deformation and polish it a little bit. And this is additive, so you can keep on polishing it to your preference. So now that we've got pretty good understanding of the hairstyle, where we're going with things, you may just, especially if you're doing like 3D printing, you want the hair to be pretty thick so that it's not going to break off or cause issues in printing. So you wouldn't want to add a bunch of strands per se, but maybe you do want to add some thick strands, because let's just say that's what we're doing with this. We're 3D printing it. Okay, let's just make that decision right now. But let's find a brush here. We're going to do the curve alpha. Okay, and by default it gives you this star shape, and let's just look at that. So that gives you kind of some crazy shapes that are somewhat conducive to hair, but I find myself just preferring using a simpler alpha like alpha number 1. And what I want to do is just a little piece kind of hanging down on this side with the, I don't know what you call that, it's the opposite side of the part. But okay, so we've got a little piece. It's surprisingly in a pretty good place. It's too thin and tapers too quickly, but we'll fix that in a minute. You can grab different parts of this stroke while it's active. If you grab the base, it'll move the whole thing. So you could embed it more in the hair and then grab pieces of it and pull it away. You grab the bottom, it kind of smooths the whole thing out, which is nice because if you keep on doing this, you see how we get some jankiness going on. You may or may not want that, but you pull at the bottom and that smooths it out. Okay, it's somehow drifted farther away from where I want it. I want it to be closer to the head here. So it's kind of like herding cats a little bit. You move one part of it one way and then another part another way, and it's kind of unpredictable. At least it feels that way initially. Then if you get the hang of it, if I move backwards on the bottom of the brush, it starts to bunch up on itself even more. Okay, but it's driving me crazy how thin it is. So a lot of that has to do with thickness of my brush. So if I increase the size of the brush and then just touch it somewhere, boom, see how it increased the size of the entire thing, but it's still, the taper is way too much. So go to my menu, back out of here, so we're on the main level, go to stroke, and we're dealing with curves here. So got the curve, curve functions, curve modifiers, and that's what I want right now. And the curve fall off is from thick to as thin as possible. And that, my friends, is not what I want necessarily. So I'm going to pull this up, and so now the end of it's going to be fairly thick. So if I hit done and then kind of touch this again, you can see how now it's a lot, thicker all the way down. It doesn't come to quite as drastic of a point here. And if I change the size a little bit, the whole thing slims down a little bit. So that may be what you want. And if so, good on you. You can call it good. I'll just continue to move this a little bit. Constantly be rotating because you work in one angle for too long, and then it starts moving in ways that you didn't expect it to. So now we still have this active curve, and if I were to draw another curve in here, see it wants to kind of attach it kind of magnetizes itself. It can be kind of weird, so that you may want to delete that curve by going into curve and then curve functions, delete, and that just deletes that little curve. So now that piece of geometry, that hair strand is set and you can't move it like we were moving it a moment ago. Let's draw another curve in here. Okay, gonna throw it in there. Bring it back. I'm gonna bring it into the other hair a bit more. And this isn't gonna be, you're not gonna get it perfectly where you want it or perfectly shaped at this stage. Well, I should think positively, right? Maybe you will. But That's not been my experience. I get it pretty darn close, and then I use some other methods to finish things up. So, okay, we're getting kind of a weave. Yeah. Okay. So they're almost, yeah, they're kind of intertwining, which is kind of nice. And is something that hair tends to do. So for demonstration purposes, we'll just go with those two on that side, but I like to do things in odd numbers when I'm dealing with nature, right? Organic stuff. So we're throwing one over here on this side of her hairdo. Do people call it a hairdo still? Is that old? Constantly getting told by my kids that that's not what we call it. That sounds stupid. So did you see how I had it going good and then I went in this other view and moved it? It wants to snap it to the closest point. So better to move it from the bottom here because it's taking this point and trying to find part of the model to stick to. So I think I'm going to make this one slightly more thin. I'm just going to touch it. Okay. There we go. Now go back in here, delete that curve. All right. So if I unmask everything, now these are all part of the hair subtool, but they all have their different polygroups. Even this one over here that looks like it's the same color is actually its own. So say it's able to click on it, isolate it. So that's nice. So you could keep stuff in here and just use like the masking technique to work with it. Or you could split them all into different subtools. And the way you would do that is go into your palettes, tool, subtool, split. You don't want to do group splits, then you're going to get all these weird pieces. Just split to parts, and then it will kind of figure out what are the pieces that are self-contained and split those out. So you could do that, but we're going to leave it all as part of the same subtool and show you that process. So let's say we want to work on this one strand, but we don't want to mess up what we've done in the back. So we're going to isolate it. Boom. Mask it. Boom. Now, the one thing I do want to work with is mask. So I want to invert the mask. Nope, that cleared it. Undo. I just want to tap outside. Boom. Now it's inverted. And there's lots of things you can do with this. I made this thinner, but it's probably too thin. So we're going to thicken it up a little bit with handy dandy inflate brush, I believe is what I want to use. There it is. Okay. And make it larger and then just puff it up a little bit. Give it a little bit more volume. It's taking the points and pushing them away. Whereas if you wanted to invert that function, you could hold down this plus or minus, and then it does the opposite, and it shrinks it, brings the points closer together, or just using smooth is a good way to go about that. All right, so we've got a little bit of volume, but I don't like that it's so tubular, so round. I want it more of a strip. Now I could have, maybe should have used a square alpha initially, but I didn't. So using the clay buildup brush, I'll kind of shape it with that. Or you could use trim dynamic or whatever, but this is what I'm using. With the minus pressed down, I can just kind of flatten it out a little bit. And the default settings, you got to be a little careful because see how it starts to get a little thinner and I start pressing on it here. If I flip over, okay, so far so good, but it could be starting to affect the polygons underneath. And I'll show you how to fix that. Just trying to get it to do it. Oh, it's working pretty good. Maybe it's already active. Yeah. Oh, no. There we go. Down here. See how it started to suck in part of it? Well, what you want to do to avoid that and ensure you're just working on the front facing polygons is go to your menu, go to brush, and then you got your auto masking. I love this. And then back face mask. Click that on. So now, you know, I can, let's see, dig into this pretty good, and it's not going to affect the back. See how those are still intact? These front ones got pushed through it because I was going so crazy, but the back ones are unaffected. So that was a life changer, game changer when I discovered that. There's other things in the auto mask that you might want to play with that will help you out. And I'm going to solo this so I can get around the other side where the face is kind of blocking me. And, you know, we could use polygroups to just see this one piece I'm working on as well. So if solo isn't quite enough, you can grab this, those two buttons, click, boom. Now, since it's got its own polygroup, we can just work on this one kind of clumping of hair. You know, maybe I want to make this a little thicker down here because again, this is the goal for this is to 3D print it, right? So with that in mind, we want to keep this relatively thick. So now I'm using the polish brush to just square some areas off a bit more. And same thing with with any of these brushes, you might have to go back and initiate, you know, auto masking for the back face to protect the back face polygons. And then let's look at the density. It's fairly decent and they're flowing all in the same direction. So if I grab my DamStandard brush, I can start to kind of hint to some of these strands in here, right? All right, let's make everything visible and unsolo. So you can see that one piece is starting to look halfway decent. You know, it's still not perfectly flowing quite like I want it to into the rest of the hair, but while we've got it masked, we can fix that with the move brush. All right, and we'll slightly smooth some stuff here and there. You know, it's still super thin, so you know, again, you can thicken it with the inflate, or I'm using the clay buildup to thicken this up down here a little bit more because depending on the size, I'm going to 3D print this, you know, got to make sure there's a little bit of mass, a little bit of whatever thickness. Okay, and so then you could do the same. Let's unmask everything. That gives us a better idea, you know. And then if we go in here and use our DamStandard sculpting, we can further make this look integrated, right? And then eventually here we'll use Dynamesh to actually make it part of the rest of the hair mesh. But I'm always impressed with how well it kind of can be blended together even before the Dynamesh part. So already it's coming together. You know, you can have a fold that, hey, this strand is folded into here, into this part of the hair. So I'm going to quickly do the same thing with these other strands over here. Again, we'll just select one, mask it, get out of there, invert the mask, and I'm not sure if I need to worry about using the inflate on this one or not. Probably won't bother, but I do want to embed it into the hair a bit more. Okay, and now we'll use handy dandy play buildup, flatten it out a little bit, and this one we're getting like some free strands because of the way topology is oriented, and that's one reason I like this method as opposed to using like the snake hook that some people use and I'll use sometimes. You know, maybe with your sculptress mode turned on, so it's truly adding stuff. You won't get this nice geometry flow that is conducive to making better strands. All right, so we're going to call that one good enough. Let's see, unmask it, select this one, mask it, go back, tap to invert the mask. And again, I want to pull this piece here into the rest of the hair a little bit more, just because that'll help add stability for 3D printing. And see, that's something that would have been a little harder to do if I was still messing around with the curves, because it would keep colliding with the other pieces and affect the whole curve along the whole path, and it's just crazy. It's just crazy. You know, you don't need that in your life, right? Flatten, add to, flatten. But generally, you can see how this approach is kind of getting us to where we want to go. And I think I'll just isolate that thanks to the poly groups. That way I can get underneath and flatten it out a little bit more. A little smooth. Oh man, so much fun. I hope you all are having as much fun as I am. because it is so fun. And you'll see that this area is filled again because initially I removed that center area, right? But whenever you Dynamesh, closes the holes. But it's still, if I would have kept it, you know, the likelihood of it getting messed up or pulled through would have been higher, especially in those initial phases. And now all this stuff is embedded inside of the head, which keeps it from being an issue for me. Okay. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good. I want to Dynamesh it together. I'm going to go to an even higher size, like 450. I'm going to hit polish, Dynamesh that. So now it merged it all together. This is all one piece of geometry. If you're happy with the results here, you could go ahead and send that to the printer and you'd have, you know, someone else's head model with your custom hair on it, right? But I'm assuming that you might want a little bit more detail, a little bit more sculptural detail. And you can see when I hold down shift, there's these different shift options. I went to the second one, which is the stronger smooth, which as you get up to these higher poly counts, you kind of need a little bit more strength to really smooth areas because they're holding their form better because they've got more topology to help reinforce what they want to do. We're getting some weirdness in here. See how some thin stuff, that's just part of the Dynamesh process. And, you know, that can be a problem. So, you know, again, I'll use the clay buildup brush and just kind of build up areas around it because what it wants to do is fill in this gap when it's doing the Dynamesh. And so you've got to decide, is that a hole that I really need? If so, you got to make it bigger, or is that small enough to where maybe I'd be fine with it closing up on the next Dynamesh. So if that's the case, you know, find ways to add more here. And you might have to just realize it's going to look ugly for a minute and just go to town and kind of close that area up. See that? It's an eyesore, it's ugly. But when I go to Dynamesh, there, cleaned it up. And now I can use my sculpting tools to get the forms I want. You know, I'll use the DamStandard brush a lot to sharpen edges. I'll run it across an edge, smooth it, stuff like that. Another nice thing for work like this is, you know, it gets kind of tricky to, you gotta have a steady hand. Let's see. To draw an edge and then draw over that same edge again to, you know, define it. Then you might smooth it. Okay, so other ZBrushers over the years have decided this is a problem as well. So what you can do is you draw your one stroke, and if you want that stroke drawn again, there's a feature, and I don't remember exactly where it's at. Brush. It's basically or it's probably under stroke. Basically restroke that same thing you just did. Yeah, replay last, okay? So now if I hit that, it's hard to tell, but I believe it did. Here, let's dock this panel, make it smaller. So I'm going to draw a stroke, and I'm going to draw it fairly light, and then I'm going to hit replay last. I don't know why it's moving around like that. Turning, it's not replaying the last stroke. All right, well, I think ZBrush may have a little bug there. Let's try the interpolate, which is a feature I don't know that I've ever tried before. So if I do this stroke and then this stroke, then I hit interpolate. Why is it moving around? Yeah, it's doing some weird stuff. So maybe this is an area you all can help me out with. What am I doing wrong? Why is this not working? Because I know it's not functioning the way it does on the desktop. So I'm assuming it's going to be a bug, but that's okay. We'll just freestyle it, brute force it, and replay our strokes with our own hand. How about that? And the key to that is pulling from your shoulder. That one should have gone in. Will help you get longer, more confident strokes in what it is you're doing. I really thought this was going to be a shorter video. I'm not disappointed. I mean, I'm liking it. I'm having fun. I think I just keep pushing things. And so things end up taking longer than they otherwise would have, you know? So I'm going to try to do less talking and more doing here. Kick it into high gear. Because y'all try this, you know, like try describing everything you're doing while you're doing it and see if it breaks your confidence or not. Confidence and concentration. See, I wasn't meaning to say confidence, but that's probably what I was feeling. That's one of those Freudian slips that they don't talk about anymore. Because somehow those ideas were canceled. I don't know. I can't keep track. So you can see that, you know, with this high of a density, you know, it's a little harder to get long, smooth strokes. It's kind of denting in, like almost like this, like I'm carving into an aluminum can or something. And that's just due to the higher density, which you need in order to get this finer detail, but it's kind of a pain. And so we could dynamesh again and be at a lower level. And then, yeah, these strokes would be cleaner in one sense, but they'd be messier in another, right? So you pick your poison a little bit. Or after we've kind of defined some of these edges a bit more, we can use ZRemesher. You see what I'm saying? And sometimes the lighting makes you think that you're carving when you're actually adding to. So it's important to keep moving around, or maybe you want to change your material to something that helps you visualize stuff a bit more. Kind of like that. So the devil's in the detail. You know, we were having fun there in the beginning. You know, making big, broad changes. And now it's like, okay, this is for reals. And I'm probably being too careful right now. Need to make some broader changes here to the flow of the hair. Try a different material here. Car paint. Metallic. And that's why all these different matte caps are there, different materials, because for different stages of your sculpting, it's important to switch that up and get kind of a different look at what you're doing. It's one mode will make you, you know, see it in one way. Another mode will help you see it in another. You get the point. So I think I want to get some more clay buildup brush going. Sometimes that actually helps me define the areas a little better than the DamStandard, and I also like how it's additive, so kind of get a lot of happy accidents going on, like our buddy Bob Ross would always say. Like, you know, we're getting multiple layers, different folds, which is a little more natural, you know, which is what hair does. You know, if you get lost in the sauce with the with just the DamStandard, then you get that bent tinfoil thing we were having. And since this is kind of saving things and, you know, making me feel more confident about getting a decent looking hairstyle, I'm going to go ahead and not worry about using ZRemesher because, you know, that's not necessary due to the fact that this is being 3D printed and we don't need to optimize it too much, and we're starting to get good forms. So don't be afraid to, change the plan along the way, because we're constantly learning, deciding, what we're going to do based on the information we currently have. Been a minute since I've done a hairstyle like this, so I jumped into the overuse of the DamStandard brush too quick. And yes, you'll find that I do like to say that word a lot, or the name of the brush. But it's not a curse word. It's short for Damien, the guy who created the brush. All right, we're getting to the point where I want to Dynamesh again. But like was said earlier, I need to kind of finish this pass around the hair, the entire model of the hair first. Otherwise, some areas are going to be more detailed than others, which is not good. We've discussed why already. And this is the unfortunate part of, having symmetry off, is you don't get one side for free. You got to do both sides. So there may be an argument for taking it a little further, at least in the back of the hair, where you can get away with more of the same. But for every positive, there's a negative. Now this hairstyle looks better maybe than it would have had I kept it in symmetry longer. It just takes a little bit longer, but anything worth having does, right? And I'll be curious to see where AI goes with 3D creation. I know there are definitely some tools out there that can create 3D models, but from what I've experienced with 3D, with AI, is it'll spit something out the initial pass, but good luck getting it to do exactly what you want. And then you might spend more time trying to edit the model and make the little tweaks that you want to get it to where you need it, where it would have just been quicker and likely end up in a better result to just sculpt it, model it yourself. Now, I've been impressed with AI and how quick it's improving, and so I think that'll become less and less, but there will always be a place for the human eye, the human mind. Even these models or these different styles that the AI produces are all based on you know, a human's style that they've determined, or a conglomeration of humans. And AI really struggles to come up with something truly unique. It'll come up with some crazy ideas that maybe you didn't think of, and that's where I think it's valuable. Is it just like being inspired by other people's work? You know, you can be inspired by how AI combines some different styles together, or their interpretation of a certain subject or concept. But so much better in the hands of an artist who can go in and say, all right, AI was able to quickly show me the possibilities here, but now that I've seen a few things, I'm going to go in and just create it and do it right and do it quick and make it feel completely custom and not have the AI aesthetic applied to it, which with most AI stuff, you can kind of tell. It's not just the fact that inadvertently adds extra fingers or something like that. It's got some go-tos with regard to its styles and preconceived notions or unconscious biases. I think with AI, it's very conscious about what it's doing, and as a result, can create stuff that is too stereotypical. Okay, now I've done this, and I don't know what the combination of keyboard shortcuts it is that makes this happen, or screen touches, but when this happened to me early on in my ZBrushing days, it drove me crazy. But I've since figured out what to do, so thank goodness. So we want to go to tools. All right, no. Just draw, or camera. No. Okay, so I did know what. Oh, it's in settings. That's right. Canvas, clear. Okay, so see, that gets rid of that imprinted version of the model. All right, so I said I was gonna Dynamesh. I don't want to lose a lot of these features. And so I'm going to try something that I've actually never tried. I've seen it done before, whoops. But when the feature was first announced, but I couldn't find it initially. But now I know where it is, and I think it's the one I'm thinking of. So we've got these strokes in here, these different shapes that we've sculpted in. And when I Dynamesh, you know, the way that process works is it smooths everything out, and you either end up losing a lot of that work, or you keep it and you have to spend a lot of time cleaning it up. So we're going to try something here. So we're going to go to menu, tool, deformation, and by smooth, there's this contrast. There we go. See how that's really accentuated what I did? Maybe too much. Let's back it up a little bit. Okay, so and this might be good for right before you go to 3D print something, add some contrast like this, because the finishing process, you kind of lose some of that. But so now with this extra contrast, if I Dynamesh, see, smooth things out, and I still have a lot of the curves. I think it's a good thing. Got some weirdness in there. And then you can always go to this polish stuff again. Polish crisp edges, regular polish, combination of that smooths it back down, but you've got a consistent look and things are looking halfway decent. Did I go too far with the polish? Nah, I think it was the right decision. But there's constantly more to be done. You go in there with your clay buildup and make things better, and it's all dependent on your needs, your preference, so forth. But the fact that we're really close to the shapes that we want, the forms and the hair, means that we probably won't need to Dynamesh again, because really the only reason to do that is to fix the stretching that happens in the sculpting process. Or if you're using it to simplify, kind of like a remeshing, you can do that too. So I'm not going to worry about the back of the hair too much. You've seen the process. It's oh, there I did something with my squeeze. Yeah, is that what it is? But yeah, you've seen the process. You can go in there and detail all the different parts of your model, and just know that there's no silver bullet to this stuff. No matter what you do, the fact that we're dealing digitally, we have undo features, we have all of these things at our fingertips. We don't have to, get our hands dirty with real clay. We don't have to have a special place blocked off for that. We don't have to worry about drying time. None of that stuff. Those are huge advantages to working digitally and huge time savers. That doesn't mean we don't welcome tools and things that make things quicker, but just know that there's someone out there who's willing to put in the time to carefully craft, each square millimeter of their concept, whatever they're making. Decided I want a little bit more topology, and so I could use the Dynamesh, but instead I'm just going to go to geometry, and divide. Now we're at 1.8 million. Let's polish things a bit. Okay. See this dot pattern I got here? That's because I moved too quickly and we've got the dots going instead of the freehand. And it kind of just depends on what you're doing or the speed of your machine as to which one you want to use. Because the dots are definitely faster, but then can get that going on here. And again, I fall in the trap of using the DamStandard brush too much, and I should be using play buildup. So just watch that about yourself, because with just a couple of overlapping strokes, you can get a lot of that detail that you were probably trying to get with the DamStandard, and you won't get that bending aluminum type functionality. All right, well, hope this has given you a good enough idea of my process, and just know that it takes time. It takes time. I've said that before, but after some practice, you're going to find that you're going to get pretty quick at this. And if you don't have to worry about recording yourself for somebody, then, and you can just think clearly, then you can probably do it even quicker, believe it or not. Let's just do a best preview render. All right, so I was going to be done with this, but I wasn't real happy with how, messy the finished product was, and I thought, well, all right, if you just continue to sculpt and smooth, you'll eventually get to where you want. But then I stepped away for a minute and I remembered that there's definitely a better way, something I talked about earlier and I kind of avoided doing for some reason, and that was the ZRemesher. So, I went in with the clay buildup brush a bit more to build things up, get it where I wanted it. Let's see here. And then I went into deformation and used the contrast, bumped that up a bit, went into Dynamesh, did a much higher resolution, like 802. Let's just do that again. Okay, so that helps a little bit, but the real key here is to go to ZRemesher, and I went to about 16 on this scale, 15, 16, somewhere in there. Hit the ZRemesher. It's going to take a while, depending on your iPad. You can see the progress up here. it's remeshing with 0 curves, and that's just means that there's a brush that you can use to kind of tell yourself which direction you want things to go. And that might get you better results or whatever. So this one is decent, but it's not as good as the last one I did. So I'm gonna try this again, bump it up even higher to 17. Let's try that. ZRemesher. But yeah, there's a brush where you can draw out some curves to kind of tell the automatic ZRemesher which way you want it to go. So I like this better. Now, it looks like a step backwards, but it's much lower poly count, 26,000. Then I go to geometry, and then divide that bad boy once or twice. And then, look at that. It's just a lot smoother, a lot more smooth. It's consistent all around. So some combination of that is going to get you closer, and you could go in and fix some of these areas if you're so inclined. But you've got this sculpted hair that's a little more effortless. Let's look at the other one I did off camera here. So not much difference, but kind of liked it slightly better. So that is what I would recommend as far as a process for sculpting hair in ZBrush on the iPad. Happy ZBrushing.